Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and today we're going to continue our review series taking a look at all the Druid cards for the Madness of the Darkmoon Faire. Again, we review both Standard and Wild on a 5-star basis, 5-star being like an auto-clued, meta-defining, insane card, 1-star just being unplayable, will not pop up in a ladder deck. So let's get going. Let's take a look at every Druid card. It's important to note Druid right now in Standard is primarily been like Guardian Animals Druid and more like Quest Druid and a little bit of like aggro, like Gibberling Druid, but for the most part, not in the best spot. More of like a counter meta pick, like Guardian Animals does well against, let's say, Demon Hunter, but really struggles against aggression. And again, Quest Druid, again, like a Demon Hunter matchup. So Druid hasn't been very good in Standard since the Guardian Animals nerf. And in Wild, aggro Druid is like a tier 1 deck, very powerful, built on a very low curve, very aggressive. And you have some decks like Malagos Druid, Jade Druid that do all right, but overall, it's mostly about aggro Druid and Wild. So let's take a look. Let's see what these cards are going to be like for both formats. So starting, we have Faire Aborist. It's a 3-mana 2/2 minion. It has choose one, draw a card, or summon a 2/2 Treant Corrupt. Do both. So if you play a card that's more expensive, you get to basically get a 3-mana 4/4 and draw a card. Is that good? It's not great. It's okay. And by itself, it's pretty bad. A 3-mana 4/4 Treant, 3-mana 2/2 draw card. Just pretty underwhelming. And I don't really see this doing a heck of a lot. I mean, Quest Druid's probably not going to run this. I mean, you wouldn't have to even corrupt it to get both effects. And, you know, you could play this on 3 and get a bit of a board. I don't think Trained Druids is doing with this. I don't see what any Druid deck is particularly doing with this card. I'm going to give this a 1-star in Standard, a 1-star in Wild. I just don't see this really doing much of anything in either format. Just feels very pack filler, very underwhelming to me. Next, we have Moon Touched Amulet. It's a 3-mana spell. Give your hero +4 attack this turn, corrupt, and gain 6 armor. So this card reminds me very much of Feral Rage. This was a 3-mana spell that would give your hero either +4 attack or you could gain 8 armor. This card, you can get both, but only if it's corrupted. Again, I don't really see what Druid is doing with this. It's Bite. It's a better Bite for cheaper, but you gotta corrupt it. And again, what are you particularly doing with this in Standard, or Wild for that matter? I mean, I think the only, like, a thought you can maybe put is, like, maybe it's Quest Druid. It gives you survivability, because you're gonna be playing a lot of more expensive stuff. You corrupt it and you, like, weave this in somewhere, but outside of that, I just don't see it again. And in Wild, there's just infinitely better armor options, and like, do you really care about the +4 attack most of the time? I just don't see it. I'm giving it a 1-star in Standard, a 1-star in Wild. Just really not sold on these first 2 cards at least. So we have Umbral Owl. This is a 7-mana 4/4 rush beast, and it costs 1 less for each spell you've cast this game. So all you gotta do to get this to be 0 mana is cast 7 spells, and it's not particularly challenging for Druid and either format, especially in Wild, and it would work pretty well in the Guardian Animals deck. Like, you have, you know, all your cheap spells you're going to play early, and it doesn't screw with your Guardian Animals because in your deck it costs 7, so you wouldn't cheat it out. And, you know, you draw this, and it just could be a helpful rush to stay alive. One of the biggest issues that Druid has in Standard right now is just survivability. And Umbral Owl is quickly a playable card for relatively cheap that can let you proactively trade. You can possibly just draw it over, like, out of it like an Overflow or Twilight Runner and just get it for dirt cheap, 0 mana, and it just helps you fight for board. That can be incredibly powerful. And yeah, there's a lot of spell-heavy decks right now in Standard, whether you even be Quest Druid or regular Guardian Animals Druid, or maybe you're playing Spell Druid. You go back to that build where you have like your Glowfly Swarm and stuff like that, where you're just playing a ton of spells and you just get Umbral Owl for cheap. I think this card will see play. Historically, whenever we've seen cards that, you know, get mana cheap, you don't have to have this in hand for it to get the discount. It's incredibly powerful. I'm going to give it a 4 for Standard, because I think it fits into, like, the Guardian Animals, the Spell Druid type decks. In Wild, I don't think this makes the cut. You could possibly slot it in to probably Jade Druid. Jade Druid would be the most likely candidate, because you have your Jade Idol, Spellstone, all that kind of stuff, but I think that deck is such a tight limit of all the cards you want to sneak in there that you just don't want to put it in there. And I don't see going to like a Spell Druid type thing because it doesn't really exist. I'm going to give it a 2 for Wild. I don't see it seeing play in Wild, but again, Druid just has a just a ridiculous amount of options in Wild that it's really hard to fit any new card in there unless it does something really powerful, and this is really good, but it's not really powerful, so I can't quite give it that recommendation for Wild. Next we have Fizzy Elemental. It's a 9 mana 10/10 rush with Taunt. What the hell is this? Ice Howl's crying in a corner. And yeah, it's an elemental, which is a first, I believe, or not a first, there's Ixlid. I think Ixlid's an elemental, but it's one of the first elementals, one of the rare ones in Druid. And yeah, I mean, it's a 9 mana 10/10 rush taunt. Is that good? Not really. Maybe N'Zoth can take off, the new N'Zoth in Druid. Resummoning this can be pretty powerful because you're getting a proactive minion that defends yourself, but I haven't really seen enough to really maybe warrant a N'Zoth Druid deck, but maybe. You have like Emerald Explorer, you have like a dragon with taunt you can resummon. Like when you want to resummon stuff, you want to resummon stuff that keeps you alive or is proactive, and this hits that really well. And you're ramping in Druid, you're playing Overgrowth, you're playing stuff like that, so this can come down a lot earlier, and you get a trade, you have a taunt, you can't ignore it, it's a big body. I could see it popping up into that. Is N'Zoth Druid going to be the way? I don't know, maybe. Maybe you could do N'Zoth Elemental, or N'Zoth Quest Druid and like copy it with like, at least the issue is you have to run Oasis Surger because that card's insane, and that's also an elemental, so I don't know, it just seems like it's a little too fringe. It's potentially powerful, like I said, with the N'Zoth synergies. Don't really see it in Standard. Gonna give it a 2. In Wild, this is just unplayable. You're never, ever playing this in Wild. It's a 1. It's a 9 mana 10/10 with Russian. It's just, no, you're not doing that. Next, we have Cenarian Ward. It's an 8 mana spell. It gains you 8 armor and summons a random 8-cost minion. We're back to Karazhan. We're getting portal cards again. That reminds me of like Moonglade Portal. Restore 6 health, get a 6-drop, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of what this card does. Armor in Druid, for the most part, doesn't make that much of a difference, but again, if you have full health, it's better. You're not healing up, but you can't heal up a minion for a distance. This card, like, if you look at it as a standalone, well, Moonglade Portal sucked. This won't be great. I think this is a lot better in terms of we have some cards that really help support it, particularly the ones we'll talk about, that you can double up on this. You can potentially double up and get 2 8-drops and 16 armor for like 10 mana, and that can be very powerful. I could definitely see like a new spell Druid archetype picking up with cards like Cenarian Ward being a part of it, because it's an incredibly, like, just imagine you play this with a Solar Eclipse and you get, 16 damage and 2 8-drops, and of course you're ramping, you're doing all that stuff, you're doing that early. Not only do you generate 2 threats, you get a bunch of armor to keep you alive and to keep snowballing. It can be very powerful, and the 8-drop pool is really strong right now. 8-drops are really, really good, and I could see this card really pushing Spell Druid to be maybe something different, maybe not so reliant on Mount Cellar and Glowfly Swarm, although Glowfly is insane. I think Spell Druid could be seeing a real significant comeback with this card being a big part of it, but not the carrot. If this was the only card, if it didn't have support like we're going to see, I wouldn't rate it that highly. But because of those kind of cards, I actually see this as being a very strong card. I'm going to give this a 4 stars in Standard. I don't know if Spell Druid's really going to be a thing in Wild. Again, Wild's so fast-paced. I don't know if you have time for that, but you have some good cards to like help that archetype a little bit more there with like Bio Project potentially. You have Whispering Woods, things like that. It could really realistically help that. And you have Moonglade Portal, which could realistically now be run with a lot of these spell support cards. So I'm going to give this a 3 in Wild. It could pop up. Maybe Spell Druid will be good enough. We'll have to see with some experimentation. But yeah, watch out. Cenarian Ward might just look like a Karazhan rehash, but with some of the support out there, it could be a really scary card. Next, we have Grebo. It's a 5 mana 4/6 legendary taunt Death Rattle. Give a friendly minion Death Rattle, summon Grebo. So, is this good? I don't know. It's like you need to be playing a tokenish deck where you know that when this dies, it's going to transfer into another minion, which is going to transfer to another minion, and it's like impossible to remove. The problem is there's so many transform effects, whether it be Evolving Missile, Zephyrus, Sap, all sorts of cards like that. There's Silence and Demon Hunter. There's just so much transform effects that this type of thing just is unlikely to work. We have seen some various success, though, with like Rattlegore. It's kind of a similar concept of something that's really hard to remove, except that's just a standalone card where it's a one solitary minion that it's hard to remove. This, you need other minions to help make it work. I think it's a little too fringe. It can be powerful, but I think Druid can do a lot better stuff and will do better stuff. So I'm going to give it 2 in Standard. Wild, I don't see it at all. Way too slow. I'll give it a 1 there. But again, you never know. But you know you're going to pull this off of Jandis more often than not, or your opponent will, and that's going to trigger you even more. So this is a card that's going to be an insane Jandis high roll, probably more than it'll be a meta-defining Druid card. So we have Lunar Eclipse, 2-mana spell. Deal 3 damage to a minion in your next spell this turn, cost 2 less. This card's ridiculous. 2-mana deal 3 removal, pretty good. Seen that with like Soul Shear, Dark Bomb, Frostbolt. Yes, those can go face, but it's not the biggest difference in the world. And then you get a free prep with it. Basically, it's prep. You can prep out another spell. You play this with, let's say, Nature Studies, right? You play Nature Studies on 1. Your Lunar Eclipse costs 1, and then you can discount another spell by 2. You get additional mana cheat. So yeah, this card is just nuts. It's going to be auto-include in basically any Druid deck that wants to play a mid-range to long game, because it's good removal, it's mana cheap. Sometimes you won't be able to utilize it. A lot of time you will. It'll be really good. I'm going to give this a 5 in Standard, a 5 in Wild. I could easily see the scene play in both formats. It's just super solid, super good card. Next, we have Solar Eclipse, the other Eclipse card. It's 2 mana as well. Your next spell this turn casts twice. So you play this, you play like the aforementioned 8 armor card, you get 2 8-drops and 16 armor. You play Overgrowth, you get 2 Overgrowths, you get your 10 mana. It's ridiculous. This card is cheap, it's flexible. With Lunar Eclipse, it can do some pretty stupid stuff. This card is bonkers in both Standard and Wild. I'm giving it a 5 in both. Both of these cards are just so cheap, so efficient, does everything Druid loves to do with spells, and I personally can't wait to play them. They'll probably get nerfed, I think. I don't know. They seem too good to be true. Again, could be wrong. You never know. But man, these 2 cards are just so ridiculously powerful, especially in a class that loves to ramp, has Innervate, has Lightning Bloom, can just do so much dumb stuff that I cannot see these cards not being just incredibly powerful in both formats. And next, we have Kiri, Chosen of Elun. It's a 4-mana 2/2 legendary. Terrible stats, and the reason for that is because you get a Battle Cry of add a Solar Eclipse and a Lunar Eclipse to your hand. Again, you're getting 2 more copies of 2 incredibly powerful spells, and that's very valuable. Yes, you're playing a 4-mana 2/2. Yes, that sucks. But to get another copy of Solar Eclipse and Lunar Eclipse, it's very powerful. It's not quite at the power level of those spells, but to give it those spells, it's really good. Especially in Standard, I'm going to give it a 4. In Wild, I don't know. In Wild, Oaken Summons is just so freaking good. And yes, you get more copies of the spells, but like I said earlier, Druid decks are a lot tighter in Wild. And I do think you can fit in Solar Eclipse and Lunar Eclipse in the Wild. I don't know if you can sit in Kiri. I don't think you want to cut Oaken, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm going to give this a 3 in Wild. I think some lists might run it, and some might stick to Oaken Summons. But yeah, it's a ridiculously good card, just not as good as the spells it generates. But again, it's generating an amazing card, so I got to rate it pretty highly. And lastly, we have Guess the Weight. 2-mana spell. Card costs more or less to draw it. So you draw the card, you'll see it, and then you get to pick, do you think the next one will cost more or less? And you can statistically, like everyone uses a deck tracker, right? You look at your deck tracker. What are the odds that it's going to be more or less? You pick that, you hope for the best, and maybe you'll draw another card. Druid has better card draw options. I don't think it's worth the 2-mana draw to high roll aspect of this card. It just seems weak to me. It's not exactly bad, but if you miss, it's horrible. Like, you 2-mana draw 1 is just not good. And you're not going to waste your Solar Eclipse on this kind of a card. That's pretty rough. I'm going to give this a 1 in Standard and Wild. Just Druid has such better card draw options. I don't see them wasting their time with this. It's neat, but man, feels bad that it's an epic, and I just don't think it's any good. So that's the Druid review for Madness at Darkmoon Faire. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Make sure to tune in later today for the next review. Have a great day. Stay salty, my friends.